Everyone wants happiness, but few ever stop to ask what it truly is. We chase it endlessly, through money, relationships, careers, possessions. We tell ourselves, if I just get there, I'll finally be happy. But each time we arrive, we realize the destination was an illusion. The finish line moves, the satisfaction fades, and before we know it, we're chasing again. In this endless pursuit, something strange happens. The more we chase happiness, the less we actually feel it. We fill our lives with noise, but not meaning, with comfort, but not peace. We scroll through screens searching for a spark, but we only find comparison and anxiety. And when suffering comes, as it always does, we panic. We resist. We run. We tell ourselves that life shouldn't be this hard, that we deserve better, that happiness means the absence of struggle. But what if that idea, the one our entire modern world is built upon, is completely wrong? The ancient Stoics, philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, saw happiness and suffering through a different lens. To them, the good life wasn't about constant comfort, but about inner strength. They believed happiness and suffering are not enemies but partners, two sides of the same coin, two teachers pointing to the same truth, that peace doesn't come from avoiding life's hardships, but from learning to live well despite them. In this video, we'll explore the Stoics' guide to happiness and suffering. We'll dive into why we suffer so much in the pursuit of happiness, what the Stoics believe true happiness is, and how we can transform our pain, not by escaping it, but by using it to build peace, strength, and wisdom. By the end, you might see that happiness isn't something to be hunted or won. It's something to be lived, something already waiting inside you, quietly, patiently, beneath the noise of desire and fear. True happiness begins when you stop running from suffering. Part 1: Why we suffer so much in the pursuit of happiness. In the modern world, happiness has become a brand. We're sold the idea that it can be bought, achieved, and displayed like a trophy we can hang on the wall of our lives. Social media tells us what happiness looks like: a perfect vacation, flawless skin, a dream career, a smiling couple at sunset. It whispers, if your life doesn't look like this, you're doing something wrong. And so we chase. We grind, we plan, we perform. We measure our worth by how successful, attractive, or admired we appear to be. We tell ourselves we're building a happy life, but most of the time we're just building a fragile image of one. The Stoics saw this thousands of years ago, not through screens, but in the hearts of people who always wanted more. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary." Think about that for a moment. We don't just suffer from the things that happen, we suffer from the stories we tell ourselves about them. We suffer when we imagine future pain before it arrives. We suffer when we expect life to always go smoothly. We suffer when we cling to the illusion that happiness means constant comfort. But life was never meant to be comfortable all the time. It was meant to be real. Look at nature. It doesn't resist change. It doesn't demand sunshine without rain. It accepts the cycle, the calm and the storm as one living process. But we humans, we crave permanence in an impermanent world. We want success without failure, love without loss, happiness without suffering. And when life refuses to obey us, we declare it unfair. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Do not hope that events will happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and your life will flow well." It sounds simple, even harsh at first, but behind it lies a profound truth. Our suffering multiplies when we fight reality. Two people can face the same problem, one in anger, one in acceptance. The event is the same, the experience is not. The Stoics believed that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Suffering is what happens when we resist what is. When we demand that the world conform to our wishes, we make ourselves slaves to its chaos. But when we learn to flow with what happens, to adapt, to stay grounded even when things fall apart, that's when real peace begins. Happiness, for the Stoics, was not about removing difficulty. It was about living in harmony with reality. To align your mind with the truth of how life actually works, not how you wish it worked. Epictetus, once a slave who endured years of hardship, said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about things." A simple phrase, but it changes everything. It means that the source of your peace, or your misery, isn't the world, it's your judgment of the world. The Stoics called this inner strength reason, the ability to see clearly without letting emotions twist perception. When you develop reason, you begin to notice the small ways your mind creates unnecessary suffering. You spill coffee, and instead of just cleaning it, you think, "Why does this always happen to me?" A friend cancels plans, and instead of accepting it, you tell yourself, "Maybe they don't value me." Our pain doesn't come from reality, it comes from the stories we attach to it. The Stoics trained themselves to pause between the event and their reaction, to see that space, that small moment where freedom lives. That's where choice happens. That's where power lies. That's where happiness begins. Because happiness, in the Stoic sense, isn't a feeling, it's a state of alignment. A calm agreement between you and life itself. And that harmony starts when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Modern society tells us that happiness is about control. Control over outcomes, over appearances, over our emotions. But the Stoics remind us, true happiness begins when you stop needing control and start cultivating acceptance. Seneca compared life to a journey at sea. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. If you fight the wind, you'll exhaust yourself. If you learn to work with it, you'll find your way home. Our suffering often comes not from life itself, but from our refusal to sail with its wind. The Stoics' path is not about denying emotions or pretending to be unshaken. It's about understanding them, mastering them, and letting them serve your reason, not rule it. We suffer so much because we try to make life something it's not: permanent, predictable, painless. But the Stoics invite us to see that happiness is not the absence of pain. It's the presence of wisdom. When you stop demanding that life be easy, you begin to see the beauty in its difficulty. When you stop running from pain, you begin to find peace. Not after suffering, but within it. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. The power is always within, not in what happens, but in how you choose to see it. And this is the beginning of freedom, the first step toward the kind of happiness the Stoics knew. Not the happiness of pleasure or escape, but the happiness that comes from harmony with reality." Part 2. The Stoic definition of happiness. If the Stoics didn't define happiness as pleasure, success, or comfort, then what is happiness? To the Stoics, the word was Eudaimonia, an ancient Greek term that doesn't translate neatly into English. It means something closer to human flourishing, or living in harmony with your highest self. It's not about feeling good. It's about being good. Not in a moralistic way, but in a way that your actions, thoughts, and emotions all work together, guided by wisdom and virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That sentence contains the Stoic secret. Happiness isn't found outside of you. It's created inside of you in the way you think, choose, and live. For the Stoics, happiness was not a passing emotion. It was a state of inner excellence, a harmony between your reason and your nature, a mind that is steady, a heart that is clear, and actions that reflect what you know is right. They believed that the purpose of life was to live according to nature, not meaning forests and rivers, but human nature, the nature of a rational, social, and moral being. Humans are built to reason. We're built to care, to connect, to create order from chaos. So when we act against this nature, when we let greed, anger, or vanity rule us, we suffer. But when we act with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control, when we align with our nature, we flourish. That's eudaimonia. That's happiness in the Stoic sense. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, said, "There is only one way to happiness, to cease worrying about things which are beyond our power." This is the Stoic paradox. Happiness doesn't come from adding more to your life. It comes from subtracting what doesn't belong, the illusions, the fears, the endless wants. The Stoic life is not about having nothing. It's about needing less. When you realize that peace comes from within, external fortune loses its power over you. Seneca wrote, "A wise man is content with himself, not because he's arrogant or detached, but because he has found the one thing no one can take away, his own virtue." Virtue was the Stoic foundation of happiness. They identified four key virtues, the pillars of a good life. 1. Wisdom, seeing the world clearly as it is. 2. Courage, doing what is right, even when it's hard. 3. Justice, treating others fairly and acting for the common good. 4. Temperance, mastering your desires and impulses. Everything else, wealth, fame, pleasure, comfort, the Stoics called indifference, not because they despised them, but because they didn't depend on them for happiness. To them, these things are like weather. You can enjoy the sunshine, but you don't base your peace on whether the sun shines or not. The Stoics believed that happiness is an art of response. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you meet what happens. When things go well, be grateful. When they go badly, be strong. When life gives you peace, enjoy it. When it gives you chaos, learn from it. That's not denial, that's mastery. Let's imagine a Stoic in today's world. Someone who's lost a job, or faced heartbreak, or public failure. A modern person might spiral into anxiety, shame, or self-pity. But a Stoic would pause. They would remind themselves, I cannot control what happened, but I can control how I respond. They would focus on their character, their inner state, not on the shifting events of the outer world. And by doing that, they remain free even in hardship. This is what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The Stoic life is a disciplined freedom. Freedom from the chains of impulse, ego, and fear. It's a paradox of power through surrender. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you discover the deepest control of all. The control over your own soul. Happiness, then, is not the absence of struggle. It's the ability to remain aligned with virtue in the middle of struggle. Marcus Aurelius often wrote to himself, reminding his mind, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoic doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. They create peace through the way they live moment by moment. Because the truth is, external happiness is fragile. It depends on things that can vanish in an instant. But inner happiness, the kind that comes from virtue, is unshakable. It doesn't matter where you are, what others say, or what tomorrow brings. If your character is sound, if your reason is clear, if your heart is aligned with what's right, then you are already living a happy life. That's the Stoic definition of happiness. Not the fleeting pleasure of the senses, but the steady peace of the soul. And it leads us to the next great question. If happiness is harmony, then what role does suffering play in it? Why did the Stoics not just accept suffering, but welcome it as a teacher? Because to them, happiness without suffering is like light without shadow, beautiful, but incomplete. Part 3: Suffering as a teacher. The Stoics didn't see suffering as something to be avoided. They saw it as something to be understood. To them, suffering was not a punishment. It was a teacher. A harsh one, yes, but one that reveals truths comfort can never show. Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, and adversity tests brave men." The Stoics believed that pain, loss, and difficulty are the forge of the soul. Without them, we remain untested, fragile, uncertain, easily broken. But through suffering, character is shaped. Strength is born, and wisdom, real, lived wisdom, begins to grow. When everything in life goes your way, it's easy to appear calm, kind, or wise. But when the ground shakes beneath you, that's when you truly see who you are. Epictetus knew this better than most. He was born a slave. He endured years of pain and mistreatment, and yet he became one of the greatest teachers of resilience in human history. He said, "When something happens, don't wish it were otherwise. Make the best of it." That's the Stoic way, to take what life gives you and turn it into strength. To the Stoics, suffering was raw material, like clay in the hands of a sculptor. It could destroy you or it could shape you, depending on how you worked with it. They understood that pain strips away illusion. It reveals what truly matters. When you suffer, you stop pretending that life is endless. You stop chasing empty pleasures. You stop caring so much about how others see you. Instead, you see with new eyes what's real, what's fleeting, what's worth your heart. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." The Stoics didn't glorify pain, they transformed it. They refused to waste it. Every hardship became an opportunity to practice courage in the face of fear, patience in the face of delay, a gratitude in the face of loss, and compassion in the face of injustice. Pain, in their eyes, was the perfect classroom for virtue. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, faced betrayal, war, plague, and personal loss. He could have become bitter, cynical, or cruel. Instead, he used his suffering as a mirror. He wrote to himself each night, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I know that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." Even surrounded by hardship, he chose understanding over anger, virtue over resentment, peace over despair. That is the Stoic transformation of suffering, not to eliminate it, but to meet it with excellence. Modern life, however, teaches us the opposite. We're told that all pain is bad, that we must fix, escape, or numb it as quickly as possible. We reach for distraction, screens, substances, noise, anything but silence. But in that silence, the Stoics say, is where transformation begins. Suffering, when faced with awareness, awakens something within you. It teaches humility, the realization that you are not in control of everything. It teaches perspective, that most things we fear are temporary. It teaches compassion, because when you've suffered, you understand others' pain. Pain brings depth. Without it, we live shallowly, floating on the surface of life. With it, we see the world and ourselves more clearly. Epictetus once said, "Difficulties show what men are." And in that sentence lies the entire Stoic philosophy of growth. Difficulty reveals character. It doesn't create it, it exposes it. When you are wronged, do you become bitter or understanding? When you lose, do you break or rebuild? When the world hurts you, do you close or open wider? Suffering is the test that separates theory from truth. It's easy to speak of patience until you must wait. It's easy to praise forgiveness until you've been betrayed. It's easy to preach virtue until your comfort is stripped away. The Stoics understood that you cannot know yourself without pain. You can't claim courage if you've never felt fear. You can't claim wisdom if you've never faced confusion. You can't claim peace if you've never known loss. So they didn't seek to escape suffering. They sought to use it as fuel for strength, as evidence of growth, as a reminder of what truly matters. In this way, every hardship becomes a sacred opportunity, a lesson whispered in pain's quiet voice. "You are stronger than you think," Marcus Aurelius wrote. "What stands in the way becomes the way." Your obstacles, your failures, your heartbreaks, your pain, they're not detours from the path. They are the path. They are the bridge between who you were and who you could become. The Stoic doesn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What is this here to teach me?" Because when you learn from suffering, you take back your power. You transform pain into progress and wounds into wisdom. And that is how the Stoics found peace, not by escaping suffering, but by letting it polish the soul into something luminous. Every moment of pain, every tear, every loss, can become the fire that forges peace. You just have to be willing to stand in the heat long enough to learn. Part 4: Stoic Practices to Transform Suffering into Peace. The Stoics never stopped at theory. Philosophy, to them, wasn't just something to believe, it was something to practice. They didn't speak about peace as an idea. They trained for it, daily, deliberately, just as an athlete trains their body or a soldier prepares for battle. They knew that peace is not given, it's cultivated. and that transformation requires discipline. So, how did the Stoics learn to find calm in pain and happiness in hardship? They practiced, consistently, patiently, like artists of the mind. Here are 4 of their most powerful practices, the timeless tools for turning suffering into peace. 1. Negative visualization. Every day, the Stoics imagined losing what they loved: their health, their freedom, their home, their loved ones. At first, it sounds dark, even cruel. Why would anyone do that? But this practice wasn't about despair. It was about gratitude. By contemplating impermanence, you remember how precious the present truly is. Seneca advised, "He robs present ills of their power who has already faced their coming." When you imagine the loss of what you hold dear, you begin to cherish it, deeply, urgently now. The morning sunlight feels warmer. The laughter of a friend sounds sweeter. The small moments you once overlooked become sacred. Negative visualization teaches you this, that everything you love is a temporary gift, and that gratitude, not possession, is the true way to hold it. 2. The dichotomy of control. This is the cornerstone of Stoic peace. Epictetus said, "Some things are in our control, and others are not." The Stoics divided life into 2 categories: what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your character, and what you cannot, everything else. Your health, your job, your reputation, other people's opinions, the weather, these are all beyond you. And yet, most of our suffering comes from trying to control them. The Stoic practice is to pause and ask, what's in my control right now? Then focus only on that. Sounds simple, but if practiced sincerely, it's revolutionary. Because the moment you stop fighting what you can't change, you free your energy for what truly matters. The Stoics found serenity not by escaping the storm, but by realizing which parts of the storm were theirs to steer. 3. Journaling and self-reflection. Marcus Aurelius wrote every night in his private journal, not for others to read, but to confront himself. His meditations were never meant to be published. They were reminders, reflections, confessions, a conversation between his higher and lower selves. He examined his emotions without judgment, his fears, his anger, his impatience, and through that honest reflection, he grew stronger. This is what modern Stoic journaling is for, not to record events, but to refine the mind. You write to notice your own thoughts, to slow them down long enough to see them clearly. Ask yourself, what disturbed me today? Why did it disturb me? Did I respond with virtue? The Stoics believed that awareness is the beginning of mastery. If you can see your thoughts, you don't have to be ruled by them. 4. Voluntary discomfort. Seneca often slept on a hard surface, ate simple food, and practiced small hardships. Why? Because he understood a profound truth: comfort makes us fragile. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?' By occasionally choosing discomfort, you remind yourself that you can endure it. You discover that your strength doesn't depend on luxury. And when real hardship arrives, you are already prepared." Voluntary discomfort doesn't mean self-punishment. It means self-training, a way to remind your mind that peace is not found in pleasure, but in resilience. Bonus practice: Amor Fati, the love of fate. Perhaps the most beautiful Stoic practice is Amor Fati, Latin for love your fate. It means not just accepting what happens, but loving it, embracing every twist and turn as part of your personal path. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." The Stoic transforms every difficulty into fuel. Every disappointment becomes part of the story that strengthens the soul. Amor Fati is not passive acceptance. It's active love for life as it is, not as you wish it to be. It's looking at each challenge and saying, "This too belongs. This too serves me." When you live this way, life stops being something to survive and becomes something to participate in, fully, courageously, joyfully. These Stoic practices, negative visualization, the dichotomy of control, journaling, voluntary discomfort, and Amor Fati, are not rituals of denial. They are exercises in freedom. They train the mind to be unshaken, the heart to be open, and the soul to be steady in both joy and sorrow. When practiced daily, they rewire how you see life. You begin to understand that peace doesn't come from perfect circumstances. It comes from perfect perspective. And in time, you'll notice a shift. The same pain that once crushed you now strengthens you. The same uncertainty that once frightened you now frees you. The same hardships that once broke your heart now open it. That is the power of Stoic practice. To turn life itself, every joy, every loss, every breath, into a lesson in peace. Part 5: The Harmony of Happiness and Suffering. We've talked about how to endure suffering. We've explored Stoic practices to find peace within pain. But the Stoics went even further. They believed happiness and suffering are not separate forces battling for control of your life. They are two halves of the same circle, each giving meaning to the other. In our modern world, we're taught that happiness means feeling good and suffering means something's wrong. But the Stoics saw through this illusion. They understood that happiness without suffering is shallow, and suffering without wisdom is meaningless. True peace, they said, lies in the harmony of the two. 1. You cannot have one without the other. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything harmonizes with me, which is harmonious to you, O universe. Nothing for me is too early or too late, which is in due time for you." He saw life not as random chaos, but as a symphony. Each note, joy or sorrow, plays its role in the greater song. Think about the times in your life when you grew the most. Was it during comfort or during struggle? When you were praised or when you were tested? Suffering refines the soul. It strips away illusion. It reminds you of what matters. Happiness without suffering is like a melody with no rhythm. Beautiful for a moment, but easily forgotten. Only when life contrasts light and shadow does its full beauty emerge. The Stoics taught, don't seek to erase suffering. Seek to understand it, to include it in your definition of a good life. 2. Suffering as the sculptor of character. Epictetus said, difficulties are what show men what they are. When fire burns away impurities, the metal becomes stronger. In the same way, hardship burns away arrogance, laziness, and self-pity, revealing what's real underneath. Each time you face something painful and endure with dignity, you become more capable of joy because you now understand its cost. Seneca compared hardship to the training of an athlete. A good character, once established, is not afraid of pain or loss. He knew that happiness built without resilience is fragile, collapses the moment life doesn't cooperate. But the happiness that grows out of suffering, that's different. It's grounded. It's quiet. It doesn't depend on outcomes. It's the kind of happiness that says, I may not have everything I want, but I am everything I need to be. That's what the Stoics called Eudaimonia, a state of flourishing that comes from living in harmony with reason, virtue, and fate. It's not about feeling good all the time. It's about being good no matter what time it is. 3. The still point in the chaos. Imagine the wheel of life, spinning, unpredictable. At the edges, everything moves fast. Joy, sorrow, gain, loss. But at the center, there is stillness. The Stoic seeks to live from that center. To them, happiness isn't about the constant pursuit of pleasure, but about anchoring yourself in what cannot be taken away. Your values, your virtue, your reason, your gratitude. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you anchor yourself there, suffering no longer controls you. You can observe it without being consumed. You still feel pain, but you don't become it. You still face loss, but you don't lose yourself. You still encounter injustice, but you respond with integrity, not anger. That is the still point, the center of the wheel, the place where happiness and suffering meet and dissolve into peace. 4. Gratitude for both the sweet and the bitter. There's a quiet kind of joy that comes when you stop resisting life, when you stop labeling everything as good or bad. The Stoics practiced gratitude for all things. Seneca wrote, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. They saw every difficulty as an opportunity to practice virtue. Patience, courage, humility, compassion. Even tragedy had purpose. Even grief could deepen love. This gratitude doesn't mean pretending pain feels good. It means trusting that pain can produce good. That life, in its mysterious balance, always gives you exactly the lesson you need. So when the world gives you joy, you smile. When it gives you sorrow, you bow your head and say, "Thank you for the chance to grow." That is the essence of Stoic harmony. To live with both gratitude and grace, no matter what the moment contains. 5. The circle of life and acceptance. Life moves in cycles: joy and sorrow, growth and loss, birth and decay. The Stoics didn't try to break this circle. They chose to dance within it. They understood that everything in nature obeys this rhythm. The sun rises and falls. The seasons come and go. Even the stars are born and die. So why should we expect our lives to be any different? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Accept everything which happens, even if it seems disagreeable, because it leads to this universe, to this order, and to you." To live stoically is to say yes to life, completely, courageously, unconditionally. Yes to joy, yes to pain, yes to uncertainty, yes to the moment as it is. Because only through that acceptance can the soul finally rest in peace. Not because life is perfect, but because you are whole. When you embrace both happiness and suffering, you stop being a prisoner of either. You become something stronger, something freer, something deeply alive. You understand what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Because when your thoughts are grounded in wisdom, even pain becomes a form of peace. And in that silence, you realize there was never a battle between happiness and suffering. They were partners all along, teachers walking you home. Part 6, the conclusion and reflection. And so we arrive here, at the quiet end of this reflection. The Stoics never promised a life without pain. They never said the path would be easy, or that wisdom would shield you from sorrow. What they offered instead was something far deeper. The power to live well no matter what happens. To remain calm when life shakes you. To remain kind when the world is cruel. To remain free even in the middle of chaos. That, to them, was true happiness. Happiness, in the Stoic sense, is not a mood. It's a way of being. It doesn't depend on how much money you earn, how perfect your relationships look, or how much pleasure you can collect before you die. It depends on one thing: how you choose to live right now. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself each morning, reminding his soul of this simple truth: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Everything else, fortune, fame, beauty, youth, is borrowed. They will leave you one day, but your character, your ability to meet each moment with courage, with patience, with grace, that is entirely yours. And that's the kind of happiness no one can take away. Life will still bring suffering. There will be loss. There will be disappointment. There will be moments when the world feels unbearably heavy. But you no longer have to run. You no longer have to resist. You can look pain in the eye and say, "You are not my enemy. You are my teacher." You can stand in the storm and whisper, "This too is part of my path." That is the Stoic art of living, to walk through both joy and pain with equal grace, to accept what comes, to let go of what goes, and to act rightly in between. There's a line from Seneca that captures it perfectly. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. Contentment not as resignation, but as strength. The strength to trust that life is unfolding exactly as it should, even when it hurts, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's not what you wanted. Because beneath all the chaos, there's an order, a rhythm, a harmony you can't always hear until you become still enough to listen. The Stoics had a phrase for this love of life in all its forms. Amor, Fati, love of fate, not just acceptance but love. To not only tolerate what happens, but to embrace it. To say yes to every moment, because every moment is a chance to practice virtue, to grow, to live in alignment with your higher self. When you love fate, you stop wishing the world were different. You begin to see that every event, every joy and every wound is part of your becoming. You realize you've been given the rarest gift, a human life, fragile, unpredictable, and full of meaning. So maybe happiness isn't the absence of suffering. Maybe it's the quiet courage to face it and to find peace in the middle of it. Maybe happiness is the ability to smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you are choosing to see beauty in imperfection. Maybe happiness is this very breath, this heartbeat, this fragile, fleeting, miraculous moment. When you understand this, life stops feeling like a battle between happiness and pain. It becomes a dance. And the Stoics, those ancient teachers of strength and serenity, were not trying to teach us how to escape the dance, but how to move with grace. So tonight, as the world quiets around you, take a deep breath. Remember, you are here, you are alive, and that alone is enough reason to be grateful. Happiness and suffering, light and shadow, two hands of the same truth. And if you can hold them both, without fear, without resistance, you'll find something eternal in between. Not pleasure, not pain, but peace.